Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for waiting through that break. Like I mentioned, we have a big segment to close out our show here. We'll be talking about that 49ers defensive coordinator opening, some big names, some surprising names that I've heard being tossed around, and the potential of Brandon Ayuk being traded. What that might look like, if it's even a good idea for the 49ers to do. But before we get too far into this segment, just remember that if you would like to have anything you say pop up on our screen, you can go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. Again, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip to leave a tip. We appreciate anything you guys put in there, any donations you leave. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. 49ers defensive coordinator. 49ers fired their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks, right after the Super Bowl. Super Bowl in which that defense played out of their minds. Super Bowl in which the defense shut down one of the most prolific quarterbacks of all time in Patrick Mahomes. So who's going to go in and replace it? Replace him. We've heard a couple names, or I've heard a couple names out there. A couple that obviously are not going to happen. A couple that I would be shocked if they happened. But let's start with the wild ones. Robert Saleh is a name that I've heard out there as coming back, leaving a NFL head coaching job and being a defensive coordinator, a job that he held before he became the head coach of the Jets. Now, he did not have a lot of success with the Jets recently, but to leave an NFL head coaching job for a coordinating job boggles my mind. The fact that that's even a conversation is insane to me. And I know Chip Kelly kind of just did the same thing. He was the head coach at UCLA, went to a fellow Big Ten school to be the offensive coordinator. But that's not nearly the same thing. For almost every single coach in the NFL, not every single one, almost every single coach in football, the goal is to become a head coach. The goal is to become an NFL head coach. But if you turn down that job, you turn down that opportunity and leave willingly, not just retiring. Retiring is understandable. You're done. But to leave for a lesser job, to leave for a coordinator's job, is something that I have no idea how anyone got that in their minds. That would cross their minds. Robert Saleh's main goal all of last season was to not get fired. He did a good job of that. He didn't get fired. His goal was accomplished. Once Aaron Rodgers went down, he was scrambling to not get fired. So, having him as a name for the coaching job is insane to me. Now, that's the most outlandish name I've heard. But there's another name out there that I heard tossed around. One that, makes a little more sense, but doesn't make much sense to me at all. One that has a good amount of traction, maybe just because of the name value. But a name that I've heard tossed around a bunch, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick to the 49ers as their defensive coordinator. And we'll go down a list of pros and cons, because there are pros and there are cons to making this hire. We'll start positive. We're positive here at Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We're a very positive show. So we'll start there with the positives. Positive number one, it's Bill Belichick. That's positive number one. Positive number two, he is one of, if not the greatest coach of all time, and one of, if not the greatest defensive minds of all time. That's 2 and 3. That's 3 positives right away. Positive number four, that defense is great. I can only imagine what they would be under Bill Belichick. And positive number five, that would be a huge pull for free agents. That not that that defense needs anything, but having Bill Belichick in the building probably won't just help the defense. It'll help the offense. It'll help the special teams. It might help them get over the hump. Bill Belichick is a guy that's won more than any other coach in the Super Bowl. So, bringing him in might serve a bunch of purposes. But the real negative here is having a guy like that be a coordinator on your team. Under Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure that he would still have control. Kyle Shanahan seems like the type of coach that would still be able to control that roster, even with a guy as gravitational as Bill Belichick. A guy with as much weight to his words and pull as Bill Belichick. And when the problems start to come in, is not with the fit, not with the scheme, but with the personnel on the staff, right? Bill Belichick, as we mentioned, is such a huge name. He's the greatest coach of all time. And he's going to be under Kyle Shanahan. What if they get into an argument? Who are the players going to pick in that situation? I understand Kyle Shanahan has his culture set, and he's done a very good job with that team. But if they get into an argument, a major argument, a minor one, whatever, but if they get into some major argument, who are they going to follow? Are they going to just ignore Bill Belichick and what he has to say? A guy who is second most wins in NFL history as a head coach. A guy who has won 7 Super Bowls. A guy who coached the greatest dynasty in sports for 20 years. Are they going to just ignore him? Are they going to just move on and trust their coach? I'm sure it won't be a big deal, but it's one of those things that's in the back of my mind, that's rotting my brain of who would they follow in this situation? That is a catastrophic DEFCON 5 whatever issue, with that big of a split. That would ruin a team. And that's my main concern with bringing in a guy like Bill Belichick. Not that it wouldn't be the best possible coaching hire, because it probably would be. If I'm being honest with you, it probably would be. And there probably wouldn't be any issues, because Bill Belichick doesn't seem like the type of guy that would take a job and cause issues. But there's always that thought. He's had total control of a franchise for 20 years now. GM, head of president of player operations and all that good stuff, head coach. He has had a total control over that Patriots organization for 20 years. And now that he's just a coordinator, I'm sure he can handle it, but that ego, it's there. As I'm sure as good as he is at controlling it, it's gonna be there. And there's gonna be moments where he's going to outshine Kyle Shanahan if he's there. And how will Kyle Shanahan handle that? Now, obviously, I'm talking about this like this has happened, but it hasn't. It's just some pros and cons to think about. Will it be a great hire if it happens? Absolutely it will. are there some potential drawbacks? Absolutely. We'll just have to see how it is handled. The other name that I've seen out there is Pete Carroll. Again, these are all huge names. They're honestly probably going to not choose one. They're probably not going to hire any of these big names. They're probably going to go with a smaller name. Maybe promote from the inside. But Pete Carroll wouldn't be as bad. Now it wouldn't be as good. He is again. You take him from Seattle. You get maybe some heads up on your division, your biggest competition in the division. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And last name that I've been hearing is Brandon Staley, who was the defensive coordinator for the Rams before he was the head coach of the Chargers, and I just don't think that's a great fit. I think he needs some time off from football before he gets another job. But Bill Belichick there's been a lot of buzz around it. So, let me know what you guys think. I'm curious about your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Who do you think should get that job? Do you think Bill Belichick? You think there's any cons to Bill Belichick getting hired? What's going on there? And then real quick before we end our show, the 49ers have been rumored to trade to be looking at trade partners for Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk has one more year before he's going to want a contract that the 49ers quite honestly can't pay, especially if they want to end up keeping Brock Purdy. But having him in there, what he does as a blocker, as a receiving threat out on the outside, is huge. But it's not something I'm convinced they can't replace. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a 49ers fan, and he keeps going on and on about how Brandon Ayuk is so important to this team because and how hard it is going to be to replace him because of the scheme that he fits. Now, I'm not as convinced. I think you could go out and get a guy like Michael Pittman, and he could do exactly what Brandon Ayuk is doing, but better. Or a guy like T. Higgins, if they get off of that franchise tag, to go and do what he does or better. Now, it wouldn't be the exact same. What Brandon Ayuk does as a blocker is very underrated, and that's why I'm sure my friend thinks this scheme is irreplaceable, but it absolutely is. Blocking is taught. These receivers can do it, especially if they all buy in. But yeah, thank you, everybody, so much for tuning into this episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Remember to tune in every single weekday, 5 to 6, on every streaming platform. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We will be back next time. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.